when you talk about self in the Samma Araham meditation tradition or the Dharmakaya school, and when you talk
Yes.
about Nibbana or Dharmakaya as this absolute ultimate state of the mind, what do they base it on in terms of canonical literature?
Yes, that's right. So when Luang Por Sot talk about self, yeah, it's he talks about Dhammakaya as being a refuge, and he cites the two suttas that talk about having self as refuge, as shelter, which is the Chakravarti Sihananda Sutta and the Mahaparinibbana Sutta of the Pali Canon. And so this, he says, refers to the Dhammakaya within us. So when one reaches Dhammakaya, according to the Apostle, one realizes that is self, a true self that one can take refuge in. So it's not the same self as we ascribe to the five aggregates. You see what I mean? So it's not self that is that comes with attachment, that comes with defilement, that comes with clinging to the body or the mind. It is a self that is realized through detachment of the five aggregates, and realizing through that the Dhammakaya is the true refuge, because it's unconditioned, you see.
This is so similar to the Tibetan Buddhist sort of argument for Dharmakaya or the ultimate Buddhahood as the final refuge. I think there's such an amazing parallel between the two. But then if we go back to the verses that are being cited to support this, like the verse that you find also in Dharmapada, that one is one's own refuge or one's own guardian, and also the Mahaparinibbana Sutta, talking about one becoming one's own island and refuge. Those are basically verses showing that liberation is really dependent on oneself, not so much to talk about a metaphysical self as a Dharmakaya, as an ultimate nature. No, what's the take on this from the Samma Araham tradition? Because Buddha was mostly discussing the responsibility, the personal responsibility of somebody to be one's own guardian and refuge and seek nirvana, and not so much about a sort of an ultimate philosophical self and refuge.
Yes, a lot of critics of the Atta perspective also say that, and they often cite this verse, which is Zappe Dhamma Anatta, all Dhammas are not self. Yes, as referring to Nibbana as well. All Dhammas referring to Nibbana are not self, but with this understanding, Luang Por Sot interprets the statement that all Dhammas are not self as only referring to the conditioned Dhammas, i.e. the five aggregates, and does not refer to Nibbana. Luang Por Sot has found that the minds and the bodies of the mundane bodies are still subject to the three characteristics, and there's no refuge to be found in them. Whereas you can't say Dhammakaya is anatta, because Dhammakaya is a refuge, and something that is a refuge cannot be not self, according to him, you see. Because not self is the only characteristic that is linked to impermanent and suffering. It cannot be separated. It's like what my teacher, Ajahn Samchai, said, it's like chain of three hoops. You know, when you lift one, you lift the other two. So when you live impermanent, you live suffering and not self. when you live not self, you lived also impermanent and suffering, and so they cannot be separated, the three characteristics.
This is again amazing. There is a very clear parallel also in the Tibetan interpretation of Buddha nature, especially among the Shentongpas, the proponents of other emptiness, as you know. They also argue that Buddha nature is true and real. The Buddha taught as anatta or non-self only applies to non-ultimate conventional phenomena. So I find a very striking similarity here.